Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to. You know what? We're going to talk about something that may or may not cross anyone's mind. Throughout all this pandemic stuff, people probably have not thought about the new infrastructure bill that the current administration is performing. So, Hank, honestly, I don't know a lot about this
Mhm.
infrastructure bill. Can you kind
Right.
of give me some tidbits or things that
Well,
in my hat?
I was up late last night, and it was like breaking news that a Senate committee had agreed on a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. It's not infrastructure. This is this is This is the bill the president was talking about that would go hand in glove with infrastructure, because
Okay.
infrastructure was like 1.5 trillion a couple weeks ago. That's still being worked out. But when the president came on, he was talking about a plan that would provide greater degree of health care for individuals, greater educational um, um, capabilities or opportunities for individuals, that we needed to do something about the dilapidated, not necessarily public housing, but for lack of a better term, public housing. There are a number of areas where the U.S. is on the decline. It has been talked about for years and years and years, but no one did anything about it.
Yeah.
And and then I think part of the argument before was, what is infrastructure? Well, as I just told again, you know that I've got a plumber currently working in my house.
Hmm.
Now,
Could
if
that
I
be
need
infrastructure?
to, he's now this individual is doing stuff with toilets.
Hmm.
But if I need someone to deal with outside faucets, it's another guy, but it's still part of my house. If I have a problem with my heating and cooling system, it's a different guy, but it's still part of my house. Am I making sense?
Yeah, makes sense. I'm
If
following.
I have a problem with my hot water heater, it's another guy, and it's still part of my house. So what I'm getting at is, there are multiple people that I would need to call to take care of the problems of my house. And I may not call them housing infrastructure. I call them plumbing and heating and air conditioning or what have you. And if I don't take care of them, what happens to my house?
It begins to fall apart.
That's absolutely correct. And the longer I go without doing something about them, the worse that condition becomes. And eventually it gets to the place where it's irreparable. So if I
Right.
plan to sell this house at some point in time, I must do what?
Make the necessary repairs for the
Make
pumps.
so For the federal government, we are looking at possibly becoming the second largest economy in the world in the next 5 years.
Okay.
We will be surpassed by China. Now, granted, China has a different governmental system where if they want to do something, the government just does it. There are no parties to deal with. There are no Congress, no senators, no judges, nobody get it done. And when they get it done, they do it to last. I can remember the Great Gorge Dam in China. I think that's what it was called. Maybe anyway, took almost 20 years to build, and they displaced millions of people
Mm.
to make that dam a reality. So they were forward thinking. They didn't talk about whether or not we can afford it or this, that, and the other. They looked at it from my perspective, they looked at it from the gains to be made by having, finding a way to conserve the water for the billions of people in that particular population. Now, we don't have that. We've got the federal government who's trying to do things. We've got state governments that are trying to do things or not. We got local governments that are trying to do things or not. And we don't necessarily have harmony in that because of the politics, not the parties, but the politics. Because it's as if, it's like you and I, we're working here. If I try to undermine whatever it is that you were doing and make you look bad, or you don't get the credit for whatever it is that we do, we self-sabotage.
Right.
So at the end of the day, from my perspective on what needs to be done, if people agree that A, B, C, D, E, F, G needs to be taken care of, in my mind, it's okay. We agree that it needs to be taken care of. Then we need to determine the priority, the amount of money, and then how long. Okay? So if there's an argument, the argument might be the priorities. Okay?
You know what, I would dare to say that the argument probably isn't the priority. It probably has more to do with who or the channel that it's coming through.
Well, and you're right. That's interesting, because I think the federal government is trying to ensure parity. Now, for lack of a better term, California is a large state with issues, and it is a blue state.
Okay.
New York has lots of stuff that's going on. It's a blue state. But the people in those states deserve as much support as any other state, be it Texas or Florida or what have you. From an overall perspective, okay. It's like I was saying with all of these things that I need to get, not need to get done, that are prone to go belly up in the House. Well, my focus is on taking care of the things that I see need to be done, or something that stops working. Or from a preventative standpoint, I know that my furnace is over 7 years old. I know that soon I will need a new what?
Furnace, yeah.
No. So I can wait until it goes belly up totally, or I can do some pre-planning, not necessarily preventive, because all of the preventive maintenance has been accomplished. Eventually it gets to the place where you can't repair it anymore. Or it'll cost you more to repair it than it does to buy a new one.
And the thing about it is, I believe that, and actually you took me through a checklist of yes and no's, right? A few months ago.
I do that sometimes.
And I believe that, at least 80-90% of it was yes, right? And so most of those things were included in the bill.
I agree with you.
So if most people agree that these things should be done, then really what it boils down to is, does someone like the channel in which this is being done? Or do they like the method that's being used? Because to be honest, for just to talk about schools, for example, or roads too, roads are technically within the bounds of a particular state, which are normally within a particular city and a particular county, right? And for most cases, those roads have not been repaired or maintained. Now, some of those roads are federal roads, right?
Right.
In Indiana, we have, I believe, a certain governor at one point maybe sold some of the highways or roads to
$1 billion. A
nonprofit, or not a nonprofit, excuse me, a private for-profit, organization. And so the roads have not been taken care of. So if that happens, what that means is, are we then bailing out some of those for-profit companies that were, privately going to supposedly take care of things, right?
And yeah, but sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to be willing to bite the bullet. And I say hold people accountable, okay? But sometimes we have to. I'm trying to remember the terminology. We have to determine the best path forward, because if we improve the toll road, okay, I don't think people who travel the toll road give a rat as to whether a private company is taking care of it or the federal government is funding the repairs. We just want to make certain that my car doesn't get torn up going from point A to point B. because I'm going to pay for it now or I'm going to pay for it later. Either way, we the people are paying for it.
Right. And I like
if
that.
If we're not paying for the repair of the road, I can remember a few years ago, I had an expensive car. I hit a pothole in the rain, and I blew a tire, bent a rim, and $1,500 later, a tow job, and $1,500 later to fix the tire or what have you. And I'm going like, man, if I had known that pothole was there, I would have not hit it, but I have to be driving thinking about potholes or just driving?
True.
So I think when most people who are using the infrastructure, okay, like we were trying to do a Zoom last week, and my internet kept going out. You had an internet problem, and your Wi-Fi problem kept going out. If we're trying to conduct business and the tools that we're using keep breaking, people who are trying to do business with us think we are not good business people.
Yeah, as bad as the tools may or may not be, and I understand that.
That's absolutely correct. So I think for those who rely on internet, we consider it infrastructure.
I can see that, because it's as vital as maybe the U.S. Post Office delivering something that have to drive on the road, right?
If you have an electric vehicle, can you imagine having an electric vehicle in Houston, in Texas, when everything got shut off for a couple of weeks?
No way, and no way. Yeah, it wouldn't have worked. And I do want to say, the bill, or just infrastructure and everything that's inside of it, nothing is a perfect solution. And I think we'll all agree to that. Like, nothing's a perfect solution. However, like you said, it's still forward progression, and you have to move towards something. What we all can agree on is whatever is happening right now, schools, roads, the lack of electrical charging stations and so forth, that's not good enough. Not in 2000 plus. That's not good enough.
Here's because, again, sometimes people play semantics, or they play the gotcha game. Do you really care what it's called? Do you care that we got crumbling schools? Is that infrastructure? Do you care that we've got crumbling electric grids? Or we got crumbling railroads? Or we got bad Wi-Fi internet? Do we have to argue whether or not it's infrastructure? We can argue that it's a problem that needs to be fixed. So what you call it doesn't really matter to me. If I'm hungry, I want food. I don't necessarily want Chateaubriand. I just want a meal. I know it's not as simple as that, but I'm just
it could be. It's. I think it really just boils down to preference, and not preference of getting those things repaired or helping people in tertiary markets
Mm-hmm.
have internet, I think it more or less has to do with methods and the channel in which those methods are being brought. I think that's really what it boils down to.
Okay.
Yeah. So and it sounds very trivial. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds, in some cases, biased. It sounds somewhat selfish because a person in a third world country.
Don't go there.
Well, in some cases, they do have access to internet.
Better internet than we do.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was getting at. And so, someone who is in rural America who doesn't have access to internet, do we as a nation, do we think that it's fair that even in a third world country, people have access to internet, but for some reason, for the country that supposedly started the internet or discovering quote, for some reason we citizens that don't have access to internet. I mean, that's silly.
You and I were talking before we went live, and again, if people who are tuning in, I am not a mad black man. I am not a mad black man.
There aren't too many of those, by the way, despite what's advertised.
Maybe I should be mad. But here's the thing. When I was growing up, we did not have indoor and outdoor. We did not have indoor plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
We did not have indoor toilets, and we did not have running water in our house.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we want it? Yes. But the utility company was unwilling to run the utility line from some hub to our little neighborhood in the hinterlands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So once the lines got there, we paid to connect the wiring from the pole to our house, which is fine. Okay. I think if we took the wool off our eyes and asked, what would we, regardless of our current status, how would we really want to live? What are the conveniences that we would like for ourselves and our family without calling them anything that would get into some type of debate or argument?
Correct. And let's say this though too.
Mm-hmm.
Giving more people access to the internet is a tool that now can allow others, access, education, connection if needed.
Mm-hmm.
But it does not mean that person or those individuals have to use the
Absolutely.
internet. A person can still choose not to use it. But if that's the case, let that be an option. Let that be their choice.
Do you? I was just sitting here thinking about the whole internet and COVID we were talking about earlier. COVID caused schools to close, colleges, universities, and schools to close. Yeah. And what was the greatest challenge for educating people? Educating students?
Virtually. Yep.
Schools didn't have enough computers. Individuals didn't have enough computers. They didn't have Wi-Fi. They didn't have all of that stuff. So the private schools that could afford laptops, their students basically didn't miss a beat. But suppose you were inner city Indianapolis, Indiana. What do you think happened to those kids?
They attempted. I know this for a fact, because I know some people that work for the school system. They attempted to give everyone a web-based laptop. They found out that many of the students did not have access to Wi-Fi. Their parents didn't pay a Wi-Fi bill. Then couldn't afford a
Wi-Fi bill.
Sure, yeah. Right. And so then you had students that obviously, if you don't have access, you can't log in, right? You can't log in. You can't do your assignment.
Okay, that's absolutely correct.
You can't do your assignment. You can't pass the class. Essentially,
you can't learn. You won't learn.
Marks. Yeah.
You know, I was sitting here thinking, because I think to a large degree, most people, or many people, will do for others what they want to do for themselves, right? And my grandmother, my mom, was always held in high esteem, high regard. I would go without to make certain that mom looked the part, or that grandma looked the part, or grandma had what she needed, or what have you. I would bend over backwards to make certain that grandma was okay. Now, we didn't have electricity, but I made certain that grandma had wood to put in the stove to keep the house warm. I made certain that grandma had oil to put in the lamp so that she could see. Now, we got smart people representing us in politics. I know I use that loosely.
There you go.
I use it loosely. And most of them are educated. In fact, there's a senator from Texas, just blows my mind, as educated, as smart as he is, to realize how dumb, how stupid he is, because he tries to make people think that, you know, like that we're the dumb ones. I'm saying that people need to get away from their self-aggrandizement and make this a better place, if you can. That's all. Just make it. How do we make it a better place for our children and our children's children? And if it's infrastructure, fine. If it's 3.5 billion or trillion, figure it out. And stop worrying about who's getting the credit, because the next folk that move in are going to continue to perpetuate whatever those programs are, and can still get credit for the fact that, you know, that bridge that we're going across the River Jordan, I'm responsible for it. You know, or this high school that was built and now has air conditioning, or the roads, you know. If you, in the military, we learned about, but the boss would say, Hank, as long as you don't care about who gets the credit,
get the job done.
That's absolutely correct. He said the credit will take care of itself. But if we can't get the job, if we can't accomplish the mission, then we all stank.
Dead and stinking.
You know? Right? So, you know, so again, people are thinking, man, you know, 3.5 trillion, that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But what's a life worth?
Hey, be careful who you ask, okay?
Well, well, put it this way: what does their life worth? You know, these guys who are standing in the way of progress.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, that's good. Let's do this. I think this is a great discussion. I know we do have to wrap it up, and I just want to let the listeners know that, man, in a world in which we have made up money, all right, we have made up the idea of money. Let's first say that we as a society have chose to make any and everything cost money. We have decided as a society to make people exchange things using money, work for money, et cetera, et cetera. So to think that we would be able to get something done and there would be no money involved is childish, right? Because that's what we as a society have chose. So with that being said, we all know that something has to be done. We could look at maybe trying to see if something can be done in a cheaper manner. But I do want to keep in mind that
you mean cost-effective manner.
Thank you. Cost effective, okay. Right? But I do want to say that in many cases you get what you pay for.
And that's why in many cases, effective. Yes, absolutely.
In many cases, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. And you know, and I appreciate the wrap up, and it's just sitting here saying, put the shoe on the other foot.
Yeah.
Um,
And the thing is, Hank,
yes, sir.
you and myself, we happen to have internet, correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
So we're advocating for people who don't have access to internet.
Correct.
Those are people we don't know. Those people that don't look like us, or in many cases. And what we're just saying is that everyone deserves to at least have access to the internet. I think in today's society, having access to the internet is almost like having access to the library.
I think access to the internet is more important than having access to the library, because the books in the library, if you want, that's history. The internet is current events
and history.
Well, yeah,
and everything else in between.
And we were talking about internet and Wi-Fi. 5G is coming. And I'd mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago that there are people in my neighborhood association who were complaining as to where 5G, the little towers were going to go. And they were petitioning the company and the city as to why our neighborhood. So I was looking on. I'm not much of a Facebook fan. Every now and so often I sort of kind of look because I find it interesting. Utility company came in and brought in a new utility pole, a really long, big utility pole. But in the process, they cut the other pole in half, so a portion of the old pole was sticking out of the ground because they weren't finished, and the utility company still had equipment on site. Again, this is the easement area that belongs not to the neighborhood but to the city. Someone put a for sale sign on the utility equipment.
Wow.
Again, it's okay as long as it's not in my backyard. It's okay as long as it doesn't happen to me. It's okay as long as I can get where I want to go.
But let's also take it a step further. All of that is okay, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also okay as long as I can use it. If I can use it and I'm not hurt, then.
Well, I would say it's okay as long as I can use it and you have access to it. That we both have access to it. I'm okay. I told people I'm willing to pay a higher city tax or a higher homeowner's tax if I didn't have to dodge potholes. If the school system was better, I'm willing to pay for that. Okay. I'm saying, how do we spread the wealth? How do we make certain that everyone participates in the franchise? Not because, again, the Bible talks about not equal giving, but equal sacrifice. So, Leland, if you were worth $190 billion, should you really worry about people, the government paying $3.5 trillion for infrastructure? Because you can't land your private plane. Okay, you can't have your limousine. You need utilities hooked up to your big condo or your 30,000 square foot house. I'm just saying that I don't know anyone who's so isolated that he or she is not reliant on some form of infrastructure. Period.
That's good. Maybe the monks, but then again, they do have buildings, so that counts too.
But yeah, but again, the monks are protected by the religion, and so whatever the monks need, the monks what?
They get.
Okay, and so that's another discussion, because look at look at the Catholic Church, one of the biggest landowners in the world. one of the richest organizations in the world.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end that discussion for today, and we will see you guys on the next one.
I would like some feedback. Just talk to us, guys. Send us some questions. We're not sitting here just jacking our jaws. What we're trying to do is to create perspective.
Absolutely.
And I just ask you to ask yourself, what if? What if you could change the world? How would you do it? What would you do differently?